Hello, good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome. This is the Alpha Phase Podcast. We're going to wait just a minute to see who would get online live, and then we will get started. We have moved the podcast to 9 a.m. in hopes that it will help some West Coasters be able to get on. Just want to make sure that we're live and that we got good audio. West Coasters be able to get on. Just want to make sure that we're live. All right, good deal. We are on and we have good audio, so let's go ahead and get started. Hey everyone, welcome back. I am the Electrical Code Coach, and this is the Alpha Phase Podcast. And our goal is to be the number one in adding value to you. If you need anything from me, you can always email me at electricalcodecoach@gmail.com. Let's get to it. Let's go ahead and dive right into today's lesson. Let's take a look at what's new. Welcome to What's New. And on today's episode of What's New, where we try to bring you current news, things going on in the world, different things to do with electrical, we're going to be looking at a striking forecast from the head of a major AI hardware firm, one that could reshape how Gen Z views career paths. And this is not just Gen Z, this is everybody in between, including you who are already in the electrical industry, those who are wanting to be in the electrical industry, and those who will be coming into the electrical industry when they had never dreamed or imagined that they would be wanting to or being forced to get into the electrical industry. We're getting ready to come into a brand new era where there's going to be a lot of jobs that are just non-existent anymore, like the shoemaker. Those people are going to need jobs. A lot of them are highly educated, very disciplined people, but they completely lose their job. And instead of retooling into something that they know will be deleted again in 6 months to 6 years, a lot of them are going to turn to the trades like plumbing, mechanical, and electrical, thankfully. Like I've talked about before in previous podcasts, the first 10% of people that we get that are displaced, we need them, right? We have a shortage of electricians, and that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today. Then the next wave of people that we get will start to displace those who don't work, dog the clock, have a bad attitude, continually just put a rock in the wheel. The next wave of people who have their jobs deleted, they'll replace those. And then after that, there'll be some type of tipping point, and then it'll get more and more competitive, which ends up being good. But as we're getting ready to learn in today's part of this podcast, is we're getting ready to learn that the demand is going to increase significantly for the amount of electricians needed, at least for the foreseeable future. Let's dive into it. Jensen Huang, CEO of NVIDIA, which is one of the biggest chip manufacturing companies in the world when it comes to fueling AI, recently warned that the AI boom and global growth of data centers will spark a huge demand for skilled trades. Now, this is not just electricians, it's all skilled trades. Let me see if I can get this a little bit bigger so you can see it. Electricians, plumbers, carpenters, and similar workers. His argument that building and maintaining data centers isn't just about servers and software. It requires massive physical and infrastructural backbone, power, cooling, wiring, plumbing, structural support, and more. He said that these tradespeople will be needed by the hundreds of thousands across the country. What's more, these positions could offer six-figure salaries, shifting the percentages that the trades are making that are lower now. So you're going to see an increase of people in the trade. You're going to see an increase of the demand. There will be a shortage for probably an extended period of time, which will allow the wages to be driven up, which at the end of the day will end up coming back and allowing you to make more money. Wang sees that the demand for global and every country will rise for these skills to support AI infrastructure. For young people weighing college versus trade, this could tilt the balance. Trades could rival traditional white-collar paths, both in demand and in compensation. Educational systems may need to adapt, expanding to vocational training, apprenticeships, funding for technical schools. Regions that invest early in this training and certifying, such as workers, might be more attractive to data center projects and infrastructure investment. On the flip side, supply shortage, regulatory bottlenecks, or migration constraints could hamper this vision. Now, that's always a part of the process, right? The infrastructure that it takes to make it happen. Wayne Gretzky was famously quoted that I don't go where the puck is, I go where the puck's going. This man just told you where the puck's going. If you were ever thinking about being a teacher, why don't you think about creating a vocational school? Why don't you get plugged into that aspect? Maybe you could start building some web infrastructure for training these men and women that are going to need to come up. Maybe you want to have a company that sets up and gets a part of a local electrical apprenticeship program in your area. Maybe it's time for you to start your own business and get a part of this wave. Maybe it's time to start dabbling a little bit with what does it take to build a data center. There's a million videos on what a data center is and what that means. 99% of the electrical is just regular, everyday electrical conduit, wire, panels, and everything else. So one thing that we definitely need to do is have the ability over this next season to ride the wave. The wave right now is going in the way of AI and data centers and infrastructure. Just like they built the railroads, they needed massive investment, massive infrastructure, and massive labor. A lot of people made a lot of money. Some made a good living. Others made a little bit of money, depending on where they were at. This is going to drive a boom like we've never seen in our time, and it's gonna be huge. And one thing I want to touch on here today, if you are a younger person listening to this, or someone who is going to have to transition out of careers, the most dangerous place on earth right now is to be at the start of a 4-year degree. There's nothing wrong if that's where you're at, and thankfully you can change your major. But a lot of the things, and it's kind of a victory day for everyone, tradesmen and women across the world and across the country, because for the last 30 years, they beat us down, removed vocational schools, pushed college in debt in this entire nightmare scenario. What once was a golden ticket in my sister's day in the 90s is no longer a golden ticket. They know it. They're intentionally selling people debt. Academia had a lid on all knowledge and acceptance of new ideas. Well, now with AI, the lid's blown off. They've lost their power. Their degrees are going to become more and more useless pieces of paper that people have. They're going to start a 4-year degree, and some of it's not going to exist at the end of it, and they can forecast it. And instead of telling these kids that, they just go ahead and get them in and take their money and get the government's money and stuff. Now, I'm not here to talk political, but we know that the college system was broken. They had a cap on knowledge. They were the ones holding the lid on all information. Well, those days are over. Now you have billionaires that rise up that don't care about academia, don't care about what you think, and they're seeking truth. And that's why you're seeing people come back to the truth. Supply and demand will always win, and now the supply and the demand is going to be for tradesmen and women. We've done a huge disservice to our nation by not training up the next generation of tradesmen and women. Well, now we're going to be forced to because supply and demand. The same people who put us down and said, don't go trades, that would be a terrible idea, are now going to be forced to come back and work for us as entry-level positions. And they're now telling their kids, I know college-educated people who would have never dreamed to have their kids in the trades are now telling their kids to consider the trades. So just keep all this in mind. And the reason I want you to have all this information is because the more truth and information you have, the better decision you can make about your career. But if you are already in the electrical industry, stay there. Do not move out. Stay there. Now, you be liquid in what you want to do, because our roles are going to change as well. For us to think that AI is not coming for us and that technology is not coming for us as well would be foolish. So learn new skills. What I encourage everybody to do the next 20 years is just to enjoy the ride. It's going to change. It's going to morph. We're going to have to be different things. You might go be an inspector. Inspectors might disappear. You might go be something else. But the whole point is just have fun while you're doing it. You're always going to have work for 6 days. There's always going to be daytime and night. There's always going to be winter and summer till the end of time. So I just encourage you, don't dread it. Don't worry about it. Go where the puck's going, not where the puck is. Everybody's racing toward these, certain investments, but where the puck's going is we need tradesmen and women who are equipped. So I encourage you to get involved on that side of it. That is the news for today. Let's talk about the code of the day. This is probably one of the biggest changes in the 2023, and this has massive implications. Let's read the paraphrase code language, then we're going to talk about it. 110.17, servicing and maintaining of electrical equipment. Servicing and preventative electrical maintenance must be carried out by qualified individuals trained in the upkeep of equipment, and it shall meet the following conditions. All servicing and preventative electrical maintenance shall follow manufacturer's original instructions, listing informations, and applicable industry standards or approval from the authority having jurisdiction. Replacement parts used during servicing and preventative maintenance shall be identified and verified under the relevant product standards. These parts must meet at least one of the following: be supplied by the original manufacturer, designed by an engineer with experience in replacing these parts for specific equipment being service and maintenance, approved by the authority having jurisdiction. Let me explain the implications of this. One thing that we've not done well in the electrical industry, and it's because the equipment is so reliable and electricity is so predictable and so reliable, is that we've not done a good job of maintaining and setting up maintenance programs. If 5 years ago you couldn't even get a manufacturer to tell you how long a breaker should last, right? How long does a panel last? They last forever under the right conditions. They last I have worked on panels that are 100 years old, still working fine. And the part of it is because they built high quality equipment at the time. The other part is it's just so reliable. But do I want to count on a 100-year overcurrent device to save my life? Maybe not. Do I want to count on a 40-year-old? How many times have you seen a GFCI from the 70s or the 80s? A lot. Do I want to count on a 40 or a 50-year-old GFCI to trip and save my life? Probably not. So what we've not done as an industry is create a robust maintenance system. And other trades have, right? Other industries have. Why not replace every breaker in your house every 20 years? Keep the guts, replace every breaker, including the main. Why wasn't the major manufacturer selling a full kit? Hey, this is the panel you've got. The can is still fine. The guts are, the panel, the buses are still fine. Why don't you slap in this new main breaker, all these breakers? We're going to, sell it at an affordable price. You can sell it as a job to the customer. And across the country over the last 100 years, we should have been slowly working and maintaining our systems. Instead, we only wait till it's catastrophic, right? Or the insurance company forces you to do it. So I like the idea that we are going to be maintaining this equipment, but this code here opens up a huge ball of worms. It doesn't specify in between dwelling units and non-dwelling units that I could find, right? So who does this burden fall on? Am I required now to go into a customer's house and tell them all the preventative maintenance things? I do know that this burden falls on manufacturing and companies that own the equipment, right? If you are a manufacturer, you're now going to have to start maintaining your electrical equipment. Or going through one of these prescribed methods. I didn't look at the 26 language to see if it clarifies it, but this just says, hey, now you're required to maintenance things according to the manufacturer specifications. Well, do we even have manufacturer specifications for things like molded case circuit breakers, GFCIs? Now we know that they want us to test them monthly, but what is the replacement life on it? Now we're going to find that if they don't already have it, they're going to have to go back and prescribe when to do it. Well, that's going to drive sales for them, so that's convenient, right? It's going to drive more sales if they say that your GFCIs are supposed to be replaced every 12 years. That'll drive sales. And, of course, it'll drive work for you, men and women who install, and it'll drive costs for the owner. But watch this now. What if I go into a home, or let's say a business, and I see that their GFCI is 20 years old, and I don't recommend it, and something happens. Now, who does that burden fall on? Am I in trouble because I didn't maintenance this equipment that I don't own? Where does my responsibility stop? Where does my liability stop? Now, I don't know if this was written. Now, let me say this very carefully. I love our electrical industry. I love everything about it, just about. But I do know that there is a lot of lobbying from manufacturers, insurance companies, and the built environment itself that control and regulate these things. And more of these codes are dumping this almost unrealistic burden onto the inspector and the installer, while all of the other parties involved are protected because if you didn't follow XYZ, then immediately we have no liability. Now, you can take that for what it is, and we know that there is lobbying. Companies have their own lobbyists in order to make sure that things are fair, things are competitive, but also that codes and things and standards get passed that ultimately, inadvertently or not, sell more product. And one thing that we're finding as an industry as a whole, and I want to get your mind thinking, this podcast isn't to fluff you up. It's to really get you thinking about how to drive change and what the future needs to look like. I've got to ask the question, we're getting to a boiling point in the built environment where there's so many codes, there's so many regulations, there's so many requirements, there's so much liability, and there's so much cost associated with all of this that you're getting states that want to get rid of codes altogether. You're getting states that want to remove all AFCI and all GFCI technology. And what's happened is to the benefit of a subset of key players that are already very wealthy and winning, you're seeing the expense, the natural expense of a house go up to where it's almost unaffordable. Now, there's a lot of factors involved in houses not being affordable. This is one of them. You're seeing regulation shoot through the roof, the cost of making these houses. Then you have some inspectors and building departments that are drunk on the power, and not just drunk on the power. Let me say this. Some of them are, we know this, and whether they're private providers or regular inspectors, some of them get that little bit of authority and go nuts. But most of the building departments are great and don't have that, but their hands are tied because of the codes that their state adopted, and they have so much pressure and liability on them that they have to then have this attitude of, we have to force you to do every one of these codes, because if not, we're going to end up in court. And it's created this kind of tough atmosphere to work in and be an inspector in and be an installer in, while a lot of the large parties seemingly have very little liability because the codes say that if you didn't maintenance the equipment, then you didn't, and we printed that you should have replaced this ever so often, and you didn't replace it, well, that's not our fault. And maybe the burden falls on you as the installer because you didn't tell them they should have replaced it. I guess, where does the liability end? Now, electrical is a very litigious business. If you didn't know that, now you know. And there's always got to be shifting of the blame. Ultimately, we want people safe. But if you are a publicly traded company, you are legally required. You have a fiduciary responsibility to do what's best for the shareholder. Well, the shareholder is not the homeowner. The shareholder is not the building department. The shareholder is not the inspector. So this is every industry. It's not just electrical. And I tell you these things to drive you. Now, do I love my industry? Do I think anybody's out to just, do I think they're sitting around in a room smoking cigars, figuring out how they can take another dollar from the American people? I don't. But I do know, and you're starting to see this tipping point happen, that these houses are so regulated, there's so many codes, there's so much cost involved, the inspectors and their building department's hands are tied, so they have to be very forceful, which is causing the rise of private providers to come in. If you don't know what a private provider is, let's say you don't like your building department because they've acted unfairly for 45 years and have held this golden jewel of all buildings in their area. Well, people got sick of it. And we need building departments, and I would rather you have a building department than a private provider under most circumstances, unless it's a really good private provider. But we're not getting into that today. And what you found is that a different market rose up called private providers, and they are private inspectors. So you can bypass your building department pretty much, depending on your state. And whether they deserve that or not, every area is different. I know a lot of building officials and inspectors that are the best people on the face of the earth that'll do anything in the world for you, that I would want to see my work because I know it's going to be safer. But there are a lot in building departments that they do misuse their power, and they do lord over people. And they did it for so long that a new market rose up in a capitalist market, and laws got passed where private providers can come in. Now, private providers are inspectors that you can hire independently, and you can get them to look at your work and not have the building department look at your work. So that rose up another new market, which opens up another ball of worms. Some of them are allowed to do remote inspections and never look at it. Would I want a one-story building made of solid steel not to have a person on site? Well, no, I wouldn't. So the pendulum ends up swinging back in the other way. And I just want you aware of all of these different things. I'm not giving you my opinion on any of them. I'm just telling you how it works. If you know how it works and you want to see it change, you are the one that has to drive the change. You can do code submissions. You can get on code boards. You can, or on code making panels. You can get involved from an activist standpoint. You can do a lot of things to help shape your state and shape our country, which ultimately shapes the world. We have an industry with an enormous amount of power, and we're seeing whole states now wanting to completely get rid of codes basically altogether because the pendulum swung so far the other direction. And we don't have the data of if sealing up these houses is the right thing to do. We don't have enough long-term data for a lot of these things. We do know in electrical, however, that GFCI save life, AFCI save life. We know that breakers save life. We know that smart electrical use is saving lives today. So it's got to be a balance, and this is the challenge for our generation of affordability, safety, regulation, liability, and if you come up with the answer, why don't you email it to me? But more importantly, if you can think of one piece of how you can help save our industry, and it goes back to what he said in the What's New. He said, if regulation doesn't choke this, we could see this amazing rise. Now, one thing about regulation, and a good example is building departments and private providers, they can just hire private providers to come in and do all their inspections. Then we don't have someone who maybe came from the trade, who has a building department, and has, so listen, I said a whole lot of stuff today to get your mind thinking about what it's going to take for our generation to make it better. If the next generation does not rise up and start making some changes, it always defaults to bad, right? One of my favorite proverbs says this: a child left to himself brings his mother shame. So I went pretty deep into this today, but I want to get your mind thinking about the things that are going to change our world, because we're going to need more tradesmen and women, and I don't want them not getting involved in electrical because it's just ugly to be a part of. So I want you and me to get involved in helping make it more beautiful. Now let's talk about Tool Corner. Get on a more that was my soapbox for the day, but that's okay. I want to use my platform to do as much good as physically possible, and it's not always easy and fun. Sometimes it's tough stuff to talk about, and I'm okay with it. All right, let's take a look at the tool of the day. Just got this in, or just got to open it up, and this is a Klein wire stripper. Got a cutter built in right there. It says copper only. Cut copper only. I don't know if you can cut copper or copper-clad aluminum. And this thing strips wire. Now, one of the hardest things in the electrical industry, if you're trimming out a building or if you're trimming out a house, is stripping wire all day. I mean, this part of my wrist, hands, all of it will start to, tense up, get tough, and they sell tools like this that do it for you. Now, the action on this still is pretty strong. This almost reminds me of I don't know if you remember that weightlifting tool that you would work on your forearms here. It does have quite a bit of resistance. Now, it would be like, how you can get different tensions on them to work out harder. This has got a pretty good tension on it. You could probably actually work out with this. Tomorrow, we're going to actually physically put some wire in it, and I want to actually strip it live on camera just to see how it does. But today, I just wanted to show you the tool, and I'm really curious. So this it looks like 20 gauge all the way up. Let me read it here. It does 16, 14, 12, 10, 18, and 20. So you can do even small wire. And then looks like in solid, it does all the way up to 8 gauge. From 18 solid all the way up to 8 gauge solid. So I'm going to see how many of those wires I have here, and we're going to strip them all and see if we can't do it live on camera. Let me know if you guys are using these down in the comments below. Are you using a wire stripping tool? Do you use your Kleins? Do you prefer I call them the Batman Kleins or the Batman Milwaukee that has the strippers, the cutters, all of it built into one? Do you prefer a traditional pair of wire strippers? Let me know what you like down in the comments below. I'm really curious what you guys and gals are using nowadays. nowadays. Now let's talk about the small business coaching. And this one is super important. If you want to land more estimates, if you want to, start landing more estimates in the affirmative, if you want to start landing more jobs in general, if you land one job, now you have a ratio, right? I'm 1 out of 3. I bid 3 and now I've got 1. And you want to constantly always be aware of your ratio and where it's going and how well you're doing. You need to get to a place where you're landing 8 to 9 out of 10 of the jobs that you want, right? Out of 20 jobs, you might only want 9 of them. But the jobs that you get on and you're like, I want this job. You go in, it's going to be this awesome pipe job. It's going to be a garage build out with MC or NM cable. Whatever job you love to do, those jobs are the type person it is. Like you get in there and you're like, I want this job. You've got to get where you land 9 out of 10 of those jobs that you want. If not, you will always be missing, lacking, and not living the type of life that you want. Once you land, let's say you bid 3 and you land 1, now you've got a ratio. You're landing 1 out of 3 jobs. I want you to get where you land 2 out of 3 or better, and you only do that through refining the process, crafting it from the first phone call to how you deliver the estimate. And today I want to talk to you about the piece of how to deliver the estimate. I do this section on the podcast because you're either in one of 3 camps. You either own your own business, you want to own your own business, or you're going to maybe be forced to own your own business one day. But this one here is so important. I'm going to walk you through the steps of doing an estimate. You go there, you listen to everything that they have to say, and then I go back through and I reiterate in the order that they said it, everything that they said. We're going to come into the kitchen and we're going to do this. Then we're going to come to do this. And the reason I do that, and something I started, if you're not doing it now, is I actually go back and film it on the second time around. I'll go into the customer's home. I'll listen to everything that they have to say, and this is one of the arts. Now, you might want to take notes until you get good at it, but I can listen to a 2-story project and then start at the beginning again with the customer and reiterate everything they said using the same language that they said. So if they called it an outlet instead or a plug, they wanted a quad plug. When I go back and I reiterate it, I'll say we're going to put a quad plug here and we're going to put a single plug there. And obviously, if it's the wrong terminology, I would maybe correct. But let me explain something to you. People hire who they feel like understands what they want and is most likely to give it to them. People hire who they feel like understands what they want and is most likely to give it to them. Then price starts to become irrelevant. Then scheduling starts to become irrelevant. So I go through, I listen to them once, being not inundating them with too much code, but letting them know that I know what I'm talking about. Then after all that, I'll say, that sounds great. I'm going to go back around and I'm going to repeat everything that you just said. And I'm going to record it so I have copy of it for my estimate. And also, this is how I transfer it over to the men and women of my company, whatever that looks like for you. And I'll say, I'll make sure that you don't get in the video. Then I pull my phone out and I shoot a video of everything that they said in the exact same order that they said it. And the reason I do this is because then they know. And if you go around a room or a house and you repeat exactly what they want, and then before you get done, you pause that video and you say, ma'am, is that what you wanted? Their head will fall off. Not only do they know verbatim that you understand what they want, but you've got it on video recording so you'll never forget it. This works twofold. One reason I record it is because sometimes you send your employees out there and the homeowner's like, hey, could you hang this dining room light too? I picked it up at Lowe's. And they're like, sure, I'll hang it. But it wasn't on the original contract. And or sometimes, so you're getting work that wasn't on the contract and your employees may not know it. If it's not on the video, you don't install it. The other thing too, sometimes you'll get all the way done with the job and they'll be like, well, why didn't you guys change the dining room light? You're like, ma'am, you didn't ask me to. Yes, I did. Well, let's pull the video out. You pull the video out. She didn't mention the dining room, he or she, and then you can settle it from there. The other reason is because I now can hand this job off and I don't ever have to think of it again. I can hand this off to an employee and I never have to think of it ever again. I do my estimate based off the video. How many times have you ever got back to the shop to do the estimate and you forgot a piece, or what did that panel look like? I sure wish I would have took a picture. Well, now you've got a video for your estimate. Then I take this video, I put it in the employee's schedule. On the way to the job, they pull the video out, and they know what color of face plates they need. They know what work they're doing. They know what material they need, and they know the entire scope of the job, and I never even have to repeat it again. And if they forget, they can consult the video. But that's kind of a little side part right there. Once I get the video, and let's imagine I get back to the office, I write up the estimate. Now, this is, if you want to start landing more jobs, listen to me. This is what you do. Before you push send on that estimate, you call that customer. You say, well, I don't have time to call every customer. Do you want to land more jobs? Yes or no? If you do, then you want to do this step. Pull your estimate up and make sure that the description is easy to understand. Your customer should not have to decipher your bill. I worked with one company, and literally it was like trying to read a medical coding. Make sure you can have all that stuff down below if it's like in your price book, but at that first paragraph, make sure whatever you said on that video is written in plain English on that estimate. That is step one if you ever want to land jobs. If you see you're not landing jobs, it's because you're not explaining to the customer what they're paying for. In that first paragraph of that body of that email, it's not thank you, it's not welcome, it's this is the project. And you write down and you put exactly whatever was said on that video in text. Then you call that customer up and you say, hey, Mrs. Smith, I just wanted to call, and before I give you the price, I want to go over the work again. Then one more time, you reiterate everything that was said and say, did I miss anything? Once again, their head's going to fall off because they know that you're paying attention and you've got it to a T. And she'll say, no, Mr. Hyder, that's exactly what I want. Well, that sounds great. Let me tell you about the price. Now, this price does include all material, or you can say this price includes labor only, how you bid it. And ma'am, that'll be about $1,800 plus parts. And then you don't talk anymore. And you let her soak it in. You've already been there. You've iterated to her that what she wants. You've recorded it on a video. You re-recorded it in text. You articulated it back to the customer. You said, ma'am, that'll be about $1,800, including the material. Then you close your mouth and let them think and don't say anything. I don't care if it's 30 seconds. You let them think. You have proven to them your character. You've proven to them that you know what they want. You've given them a fair market price. They may have already got other bids. That price will start to become irrelevant because they know that you're the one that's most likely to give it to them. If they look at one estimate and it says circuit to garage, 2 receptacles, and yours says, we're going to go to the garage. We're going to install 2 receptacles. On the right-hand side, it's going to be a quad. You will start blowing your competition out of the water. Make sure that you call them. Then if she says, that sounds great, get them on the schedule right then. If you're at your company, somebody else does it, get yourself trained if you can to get the ability to get it on the schedule right then, and then let the men or women in the office fix it to the way they like it. Can I get you on the schedule right now? Whether that's an email drafted to them and then they put it on the schedule, just make the action right then. If they say, well, that sounds great, can you send the price over? Say, absolutely, I sure will. I'll send it over now. If you don't get it within 10 minutes, please call me back. I want to make sure that you got it. Send that thing over and just wait. Then you can do a follow-up call. Those steps right there, if you want to start landing more jobs, are the juice for estimating. Now, there's a lot more that we could cover. I have a 6-part estimating masterclass that's absolutely for free on YouTube. You can just YouTube Electrical Code Coach Estimating Masterclass. Now let's get to know the coach. What's a childhood memory that shaped who I am today? That's a great question. I would say, and I tell it in my Code Coach program, I remember one time, I would have been 4 or 5 years old, and my mom had these metal chairs. I couldn't even reach the floor, and we were sitting at the window, and, you know, we grew up dirt poor, but my mom, for whatever reason, had to give me, I believe it was just Rice Krispies, likely a government box. And we didn't have milk, so she had to give it to me in water. I'll never forget this. It's like me, I'm sitting there right now, and I'm sitting there swinging my legs, bouncing. You can imagine how hyper I was. And my mom, and I said, "What's this?" She said, "Oh, you haven't heard about this? This is milk and water, or this is water and cereal." She said, "All the cool kids on the block eat water and cereal." And I said, "Awesome." And I just ate that thing like nobody, and I thought I was the coolest kid on the block. My sister, who was probably 8 or 9 at the time, probably didn't buy it at all. She was aware of what was going on. But my mom would take whatever she had and make it work. And I'm telling you, that has shaped a huge part of who I am today. Not only did I know we didn't have anything, but I thought that I was the coolest kid on the block because I had water and cereal. So just work with whatever you got and make it work. And never forget that your kids, they are listening. And if she would have cried and complained and said, "Honey, this is all we've got, but you got to eat it," and she would have forced me to eat it, I promise you I would have never forgot it. She told me I was the coolest kid on the block because I had water and cereal, and I believed it. So what you say or say you aren't, you are. So keep that in mind. If I could move anywhere in the world, where would it be? I like America. But let's say you can't move to America. And I disregard all politics or whatever. I would probably move to Australia. I feel like it's isolated enough, kind of give me that feeling like I'm in America in that sense. And I think it's got really cool landscape and topography, and I feel like the mindset I could vibe with in some of the places that I've seen. But if I had to move, I'd probably move to Australia. The biggest risk I've ever taken in my career, and how did it turn out? I think it's all risky, right? If you think it's risky to invest, wait till you get the bill for not investing, right? I would say the biggest risk was, I don't know, just going to work every day. I guess, I'm very risk averse, risk tolerant, very risk tolerant. So I would say some of the major moves that the times that I decided to branch off and go out on my own were probably some of the biggest risks. And you've got to weigh the balance. If it's time for you to go, go. And the best way to go, listen to me, if you're ever thinking about working for yourself, the worst way to go is to just quit. No license, no insurance, no nothing. The next little bit better way is that you're licensed and insured, but you just quit with nothing. No plan, no business cards, no anything. A lot of people get a little bit of work and quit. That's not a real good plan either. But the best way to do it is if you're fully legitimate. You shouldn't be working without it. You're fully legitimate. You're all set up. You've got your Google My Business, and you're working 40 hours for the man, and you're working 10 hours for yourself. Then you're working 20 hours for yourself. Then 30, then 40. Then something's got to give, and then you go off, and usually those people are the most successful. If someone made a movie about my life, what would the title be, and who would play me? The title would be, let's get to it. And I'm just going to say like Brad Pitt, right? Like, I mean, if you're going to go big, go big. Yeah, Brad Pitt would play me for sure. What's one belief or piece of advice that I've changed my mind about over time? Anybody who ever told me there was a limit. Limits up here. There are no limits. We live in an infinite universe, and you have infinite potential. Now, obviously, I'll never be an NBA player. There is reality, right? I'm not going to walk on to the Bulls, but literally the sky's the limit. So anybody and everybody who ever told me that I couldn't, that I wouldn't, that I can't, which was a lot. My mother, bless her heart, one of the nicest people you'll ever meet, was treated like a second-rate citizen everywhere she went. I don't know why they treated her like a second-rate citizen. And I'm telling you, everyone who said I couldn't or I wouldn't or I can't, that would be the belief that I've changed my mind about, because I can. And my mom told me that. She said you can do anything you want to do. Let's get into the sponsor of today's video.
When it comes to electrical work, efficiency and organization are key, but managing wire on the job site doesn't always come easy. Designed with efficiency in mind, StackMax protects your wire from damage, keeps your workspace organized, and makes transporting...
It's probably talking in the background. I'm so sorry. If you don't have StackMax, I highly recommend it. We don't need to be breaking wire, losing rolls of wire. Wire is very expensive. In my opinion, it's the #1 solution for stacking, racking, pulling, and storing wire. If you'll head over to stackmax.com, you can use the coupon code COACH and save 10%. This is one thing that I will not live without when I start racking out my new van. I will absolutely be getting these and putting them in action. Let's get to it. Now let's do the electrical question of the day. This is an old video of mine. Let's see how old it is. It was a year ago, and for some funny reason, I decided to use an interesting accent on it. So you guys will probably get a giggle out of this. I must have been just feeling it that day, and you guys will see what I'm... Hello, this is the electrical question of the day. Can Romex NM be installed in a drop ceiling? Well, for this answer, we're going to head to 334.12. And when we get there, we're going to find that this is the uses not permitted for Romex. And in part 2, we're going to see that exposed in a drop or suspended ceiling cavity in other than 1 and 2 family dwelling units, it is not permitted. So the answer to today's question is maybe so. If you are in a drop ceiling of a 1 or 2 family or multifamily dwelling unit, you are allowed to do it. If you are not, then you are not. I don't know what I was thinking that day. I posted that about a year ago. Sometimes I get, you grind, and sometimes you're like, you know what, I'm just going to have some fun today. So apparently I thought it was a good day to do an accent. But it still holds true. If you are installing NM cable and you're in a dwelling unit and you've got drop ceiling, you can totally do it. You've still got to follow the other codes for NM cable when it comes to boring holes, depending on the size, subject to physical damage, but you can run it in a drop ceiling in 1 and 2 family dwelling units. It's very popular in certain areas where there's lots of drop ceiling. Some areas they're all hard ceiling. So just depends on your area. Let's round out today with the Mindset University, because it doesn't matter how well of a player you are. If you don't have the right mindset, then you will be on the bench of life. Let's go ahead and dive into it. I challenge you today to think of this concept, and I want you to do it today. It's called deep work, where for a certain set of time, you shut the phone off, most importantly, and I'll do it with you today. You shut the phone off, most importantly. You set out with a specific task, no other browsers open. If you're out on the job, nothing else going on, and you do what's called deep work. You can do more in 30 minutes of focus than in 90 minutes when you've got multiple tabs open, the phone's ringing, and you're distracted. You know it, and I know it. I encourage you to get into this deep work, because that is where your stripes are earned, right? That is where you are going to get in the zone, in the rhythm, learn the tricks with your tools, learn the tricks with whatever you're working with, and you're going to GSD, which is get stuff done. So listen to me. I encourage you today, think about this concept of deep work, shut everything else off, do just a 30-minute window, and see how much you can get done in 30 minutes. Well, you say, well, I work for somebody else. What's it matter how much I get done? If you have that mindset, you'll never be an owner. You say to yourself, oh, if I was an owner, I would deep work and I would get a lot done and make a lot of money. if you won't do it for somebody else, you won't do it for you. And you'll continually always be working for somebody else, never making what you want to make, driving what you want to drive, living where you want to live. You've got to get a new mindset. You've got to take the old mindset out. You've got to put the new mindset in. And the new mindset is that I'm going hard. I don't care whose name is on the company, because it's me. It's my integrity. It's who I am. It's who I want to be. I'm going to be the best worker. And one day that best worker will pay off. You'll make more money where you are. You'll be able to leave and go make more money somewhere else. So today I want you to take the concept and run with it called deep work. Try a 30-minute stint and see how many breakers you can install, how many switches you can install, how many receptacles you can install. Of course, do them all the proper way. Fast, deep work that's a bunch of junk doesn't help us. High quality work, but laser focused. Do you want to know the number one differentiator in the new market? Are the ability of those who can focus. The entire world is distracted. And if you can be the one to focus, you will beat everybody around you 10 times out of 10. I am the electrical code coach, and my bargain is that these videos will add value to you, and you will in turn add value to others. If you need anything from me, you can always email me at electricalcodecoach@gmail.com. This is the Alpha Phase Podcast, but there is one who is the Alpha of Alphas, and his name is Jesus. And he's the one that empowers me to have the grit, the grind, the determination, and to be able to deep work. And he can do the same for you. I am the Electrical Code Coach.